Well, we'll get going. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. Konnichiwa, ohayo gozaimasu, konbanwa. This is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. I'm here, you're there, wherever you are, and invariably you and your business want to be somewhere else. And so that's why you're here, to learn more from the experts. And we have three magnificent experts. Tamer Flores is going to be kicking us off today and talking through a process that he's developed around global expansion. And then we have Catherine Reed and Elizabeth Glenn here to talk about their own perspectives of what Tamer presents and then provide additional information. We're going to go about 25 to 30 minutes with Tamer to begin with, and then open up the floor to questions. And I encourage you to raise your hand for that, or we'll just open the floor and have you step in. But it almost always works better if you raise your hand to be able to get to you. Then we'll go to either Catherine or Elizabeth next. They'll each have about 5 minutes of conversation around what they've heard and what their perspectives are around this topic. And then the last 15 minutes or so, we'll have some additional Q&A for everybody. So Tamer, let's start with you. You and I have known each other for at least a few years, and I know you've
Right.
been one. It was clear for me right from the beginning that you knew what you were talking about from a global expansion standpoint. So I've really enjoyed learning more about not only your experience, but your expertise, and now this process that you've pulled together from your experience that's been successful for others that you'll be sharing today. So thank you from your base in Florida as you grow companies around the world to stop in today as a member of Global Chamber to share this information. And we look forward to learning more today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doug, for this presentation. Thank you all for being here today. And we're going to be talking about these global expansion strategies. Let me share my screen now. And I guess you can see it now, correct? So good.
We can. Yes, we can.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. So basically, today we are here to talk about how to choose the best strategy for international expansion. And this is going to be an interactive discussion based in a flowchart that I have created. It's my own IP, and will help you define the reasons for each strategy. So this is myself, as you know, my name is Tamer Flores. My motto is better, simple, different, because I believe that success comes from finding better ways, sharing them, and making things simple, easy and repeatable for my clients, and actually in every aspect of life. And I achieve this by providing different out-of-the-box solutions, creating innovative ways to solve problems that others may overlook. So at Biziglo, I specialize in streamlining international growth, which is what we're going to be talking about today, through innovative and straightforward solutions. And with 25 years of experience in growth and strategy, I collaborate with companies, my clients, that are expanding internationally as their fractional chief global growth officer. And for instance, I led a hair club to over 35 million in new sales in 2 years and projecting $500 million in growth over the next decade. So that's some of my previous work. And for specific questions related to your company or client, please connect with me after this presentation. And this is my info. I will show it again at the end. And for introducing this session, we'll explore the best strategies for international expansion and using a flowchart that I have created to guide our decisions. It's a guideline, and it's a very good one. It's not mandatory, though. And you will have the opportunity to guess the best answers at each step, and you will vote and see if you can nail down what is the best strategy for each situation. So as a note, this strategy flowchart is not applicable for import-export or distribution models. This is more for physical locations that you want to open, like a company that wants to open a physical location. This is their guideline. So this is the flowchart. This is blank, and this is what we're going to be developing. It has initial conditions, and then a few ones, and then the three diamonds are the questions, the main three questions that you have to ask, and the rectangles with rounded corners are the answers, the strategies. So this is what we're going to be figuring out today, together, of course. So for initial conditions, these are again for preferred entry strategies, for physical locations where you want to go into a new country and be there with your brand and your company. And the main topic here is balancing risk versus revenue in a new country. So basically, if you think about it, if there is going to be a lot of revenue to be made in that market, then of course you can take bigger risks and you will make more money as a result. And if there is a little bit less money to make, then you will be choosing less risky strategies to balance that. And you are still going to be making money, but with less risk at the beginning, right? So initial conditions that I use is, first of all, that the niche has to be sufficiently large with a dependable economic capacity or credit system for your products or services. In other words, in simple words, there has to be a market for your product or services. There has to be money and there has to be a demand. That's it. So you, before starting this analysis, you have to make sure that there is interest and there is money for your product or services. And second of all, another important condition is that the country of origin where you're coming from are perceived in a positive way in that new country. So if there is some negativity or some, in the new country, they don't see your country as a good provider of quality products, or they have some kind of political situation, it's better not to start in that country. Let's start in other countries, and then we can move forward later on those. And again, this is for physical, opening physical locations and your brand. So here it is. This is where the presentation really starts. Question number one. This question has to do with basically how much are you committed into this project? And the question is, are we ready to commit the necessary resources, money, time, and effort to establish and operate a fully owned enterprise in this location? So I have a quick story here that I basically developed a fabulous strategy for a company. And then I came back and told them, hey, we just need to do this. And they said, you know what, we want to go faster and spend less money. So basically the strategies that I had defined were the best ones, but they didn't want to spend the time and the money for those strategies. So I placed this question at as the first question of three, because it's easy to talk to your company or to your client and ask them this question and define if they want to spend a little more effort into these markets or not. So if you say yes, you go to the next question, and decide from there. And if you say no, you go to the right of the chart, and you will have another question to define. So then we go to question number two, and the question is related to basically the economic capacity of that market. So are the market's industry prices and income levels in this niche comparable or higher than those in the country of origin? This is always assuming that in the country of origin you are successful and you have a market. And the question is this market at least the same or higher economic capacity than your original market? And if it is, you have a good potential for making economic revenue in this market, and you go to the left side of the flow chart. But if it is not as good, you always have economical potential because we have defined that from the previous questions and the initial conditions, but it's going to be a little less, and therefore you're going to go to the right side of this flowchart, right? And here's where the fun part starts. Question number 3. This question is for basically the last one. You're coming from the previous 2 questions. On the left side is when you answered yes, and on the right side when you answer no. So the left side is the markets where you have more money, and the right side is you have a little less money on those markets. So what would be the question that you would ask that will define your strategy? What is this question number 3? Is somebody wants to try and ask this question? Somebody wants to guess or knows the answer? I see Jim moving. So can you try to guess what the third question is, Jim? No, not sure. Cannot hear you. Turn on your mic.
Doing
There you
what my
go.
company does, mine would be what is the competitive situation to make it worth the effort?
Perfect. That's the right
Really?
question to ask. Is there a significant number of competitors in this territory? And this is the most important question because that will define if you have already a market, if the market is already saturated or is like very populated, if it is if there is a market but it's not, there is also a lot of room to grow, or if there's no market, right? So this is the main question that you will have to ask to define. And these 3 questions are very simple to ask, and so the strategies at the end are very simple to define, but you need to know why are you choosing acquisition and not subsidiary, or why are you choosing no joint venture and you're not choosing franchising, right? What are the differences? And the differences are coming from this question. Okay, so cannot hear you very well. Okay, so anyway, let's continue. Here, Elisa, can you please open the first survey? And let's say we have a significant number of competitors, and yes, there are many. And on the left side here, we see that we have a good economical market. So the question is, when you have a good economical market and you have a significant number of competitors in this square here, what is the best strategy? You can vote now, please. Please vote. What do you think is the best strategy here? Acquisition, subsidiary, opportunity of a franchise, evaluate, or NFA, non-franchise alternative, a joint venture. So what is that you think is the best strategy if you have a very good market and at the same time there are many competitors? So you tell me, Elisa, when you are closing this, you can all vote, please, and get your answer. Okay, Elisa, let me know when it is done. We have 8 votes. We can wait for a few more votes here and see what do you guys think is the best strategy when you have many competitors in the territory and there is a good market, there is a good money to be made out of that. Okay, so 11 votes now. Anyone else wants to vote? Okay, we're going to be asking this question several times, and you can vote each time that I'll ask the question. So I'm going to end the poll, and basically these are your answers. And basically, I'm going to stop sharing this. And basically, the correct answer for me, according to my experience, is acquisition. Why? Because you have so many companies that are already in the market, and you can choose what is the best company. You have where to choose from. And also, since there is a lot of money in that market, you don't want to go by yourself and start learning how the market works there. You want to basically work with somebody else that is already there. And because there is a lot of money there, you want to acquire that company. And that would be the best strategy in this case. So now let's see. Let's say that there is the same conditions, but there is good money to be made, but there are only one or two competitors already in the market. So it's not a good market to probably not a good market to acquire a company because there's only one or two. And but there's a good money to be made there. So what would be the best strategy there? Elisa, can you please open the poll for this? Thank you. So you guys can vote there. What would be the best alternative in this case when you don't have too many companies already in that market, but there is one or two, and you are probably going to want to compete with them, right? And so what makes more sense? And you want to be there directly, probably because there's good money to be made and you want to make the most out of it, right? And so that's that would be the second um, situation that we're analyzing here. We have 7 votes already and 9 votes. So again, according to my experience, I'm going good. We have 12 votes now. That's good. Nice. So I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. And according to my experience, the best option here would be subsidiary, as most of you guys have voted here. And that is because uh, you can compete. There's not too many companies there, so acquisition doesn't make too much sense. But you want to be there directly because you want to make the most money out of it. So you will, and you don't have too much competition there. So if you open your company, you are not going to be facing so many competitors. So it makes more sense to open a subsidiary there. So that's great. And then let's say that there is no competitors in that market. So what would be the best option there? There is it is a good market, but there are no competitors, zero competitors there. So what is going on in this market? What would you do? What would be the best strategy in that case? Because you have, you can vote now. There's the poll is open. So you don't have basically competitors, and there is a reason for that always. So I was talking to another specialist in this, and he told me that he had this case, and the company was great. We're going to have all the market for ourselves. And actually, no, it's not that beautiful as a situation, because there is a reason why there are no competitors in the market. It's not just like nobody thought about it and nobody thought about getting into this place. So we have 8 votes, and we are going to finish this poll right now. And the right answer in this case is what you guys have guessed. Evaluate opportunity of franchise, JV, or even subsidiary, but not, of course, impossible an acquisition because there are no competitors. So acquisition is not an option. And but most likely you want to choose franchise or JV or joint venture because you don't have market there. So you have to establish and create the market, and you don't want to risk too much. So franchise and joint venture are strategies where you risk a little bit less. Okay, so now we go to the right side of our flow chart, and then you have a little bit less money to be made, and there are many competitors. So you don't want to acquire one of those competitors. Please start voting. You can vote now. And you don't want to acquire one of those competitors because the market is not as big. So if you spend all that money acquiring, there's not going to be so much as a reward. So it's probably acquisition is too risky. So we're talking here all logical decisions, right? So acquisition would be too risky. And you want to enter the market, and there is a market, it exists, and there are a lot of competitors there. So what you want to do is, of course, you want to know, acquire the knowledge of the competitors, right? But not pay for their company. So that would be too much of an investment. So how do you get the knowledge of the competitors that are already in the market, but you don't spend that much money? And that, I'm going to stop the poll now. And now, basically, that would be a joint venture. You can get together and partner with some of the companies that are already in the market and don't risk too much, but maybe you can provide your product or services. You can teach them your services. You can provide them with your products, but you're not risking as much. And you immediately acquire the knowledge of the market, and that is a joint venture. So that is the perfect strategy in that case. Now, let's say there is only some competitors, one or two competitors there, and the market is not as big. The money to be made is good, but it's not as good as on the other side, right? So you have some competitors. So what is Lisa, please open our next poll. And what is the best strategy in this case? Because you can probably compete, and you don't have too many other companies to compete against, right? And but you want to make money from the beginning with a less risky strategy. So you can probably set up some system where you can sell your products, but you can also teach them how to do business. You have your business model, you can teach them how to do that. So and there's not too many competitors that you need to fight against, so, or that you can choose from, for a joint venture. So in this case, we have 5 votes here. Anybody else wants to vote? So in this case, I'm going to close the vote here. And in this case, the best strategy is a franchise, because you can make the people that is interested in your products or services pay for learning from you, pay from you providing the products or services, and pay royalties afterwards. And there's not much competition there. So you are likely to be successful if your product has some difference or competitive advantage. And you are going to be getting money up from the beginning because you have a franchise fee. So if you have not much, you don't want to take that much risk, and basically there's only some competitors, the franchise is the best alternative. Okay, and then let's say there are no competitors at all, similar to the other one, but the market is not as big, or the money to be made is not as much, and there are no competitors. Eliza, please open the next. Thank you. So question number 6 is the same one. What is the best alternative in this case? There's money to be made, but not as much, and there's no market yet. So there's no market yet. You have to create the market, and the people in that country is not used to your product or service or the idea of it, and you will have to teach them. And so what would be the best? In this case, the best would be to basically not enter this market at the first stage. You can probably enter that at a later stage, But if you are starting to do your international expansion, you don't want to start it in a market like this. You don't want to start your adventure internationally in a market that doesn't know or doesn't have a demand for your product yet, or doesn't have competitors, right? So that's good. And then finally, there's one more option here, and it is when there is some money to be made. It's a good market, not as much as on the other side, but there is a good market anyway, and there are many competitors. And on top of that, it's a piracy market. Basically, you know that your products or services are going to be copied. You know that it's a culture, maybe in Latin America or Asia, where they can quickly copy what you can offer, and you worry a little bit about it. And there is a market. There's a lot of people that want your product. There's a lot of offering for your product. But if you launch by yourself, then you will have to fight against them copying your product or services, or just copying your brand, or saying that they have your brand when they don't. They're creating a different product but putting your brand into it. So we have eight votes, and the right option here would be non-NFA, non-franchise alternative model. This is a model that I have created. It's another intellectual property of mine, where you actually take advantage of the pirates in the market and use that to leverage on your favor instead of fighting it. So this is a very interesting model that I have created and that has worked really good. So let's go to the next. This is the complete flow chart of what we have talked about. So all the steps that we have taken is this. And what else can BizDeglo can do for you? So let's go through this very quickly. The NFA, non-franchise alternative model. We have created this. And with this, rather than battling piracy, the NFA model leverages into your benefit, and it will help you develop the market and make money out of it, but using piracy in your favor. Why it matters? Because if conventional strategies don't align with your company's need, we can create different solutions, innovative solutions that cater specifically to your market. And that's what BizDeglo does. We create innovative solutions. Another solution that we have is a revenue calculator, where basically it has more than 300 formulas. And this one that we created was for a franchise system, and it will you fill up a few conditions there, a few numbers, and it will tell you how much money you're going to make in the next 10 years. With a definite number of international masters, or with franchisees and stuff, and you put those numbers in, and it will tell you how much money you will make, and you can decide if it makes sense. We can make this kind of calculation for different models too, if you need that. And finally, what else can BizDeglo do for you? We can accelerate your goal to international market entry. And accelerating your goal to that is like this guy, what he's going to do is accelerate your goal to market entry. So that's what we can do for you. It's just very simple. You don't go through all the steps of before, but you get this guy, which is us, and he's going to make the goal very fast and quickly for you, right? So that's what BizDeglo can do for you, and that's what we want. Because we want to be successful, we can do it better, simple, different, and we can do it less costly and faster. So this is our presentation. In conclusion, we have walked through this flowchart step by step, and the main thing is to remember to assess your entry options carefully and balance risk with potential revenue. So this is all about balancing risk versus revenue, and you make the decision on the strategy according to that. So any questions?
Thank you, Tamer. Any questions, please? Go ahead. Hi, Anita. Why don't you go ahead?
Hi. So I understand the risk versus revenue model, and that's great. Answered a lot of questions for me. But when you're going into a market where there is a lot of competition, to what extent do you address differentiating as opposed to simply competing?
Correct. Yes, you always have to differentiate yourself. That's definitely you need to do that. But there's going to be a group of people, of consumers, that are going to be preferring the products and services that they already know, and there is going to be a behavior in the market that you will need to spend years learning. So definitely you want to either acquire a company and then develop that company and modify that company to your products and to your differentiation, or do a partnership, a joint venture with one of those competitors. And it doesn't take at all from the need of differentiating yourself. Definitely, you need to do that.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. And Jim, did you have a question, please?
I always have to comment first, but I got two overlapping questions with two subjects that are overlapping. First
We
of all,
don't have too much time, so please,
I've always
be
used gray
quick.
market and black market. I've never heard of piracy. I'm going to steal that. Tamer, the revenue calculator, going back to your, where's my notes, number 2 on revenue, how do you handle all of the almost daily currency fluctuations? How far out can you go and make an accurate revenue prediction?
Right. Well, you on my second question, you basically are talking about what is the economical capacity of that market, and for products, you would calculate, or you would see if the competitor products have a similar price than yours. And in service, you would be more looking at total market. So how much money can you make in total? Because if the service that you are providing in your country of origin is more expensive, it will probably be less expensive in that country. So you don't need to worry about a one-by-one comparison when it is a service, but you need to worry more about a total revenue. And the exchange rate, actually, you are using total revenue in your own currency, in your country of origin currency. That's what you need to be looking at, not exchange rates, or the exchange rate compared to your country of origin. That's the only one you need to be using. You don't need to be calculating that every time.
Thank you, Jim, for the question. Mirza.
Thank you, Doug. Always a pleasure to see you, Tamer, and a great presentation as always. Thank you for your thought leadership. A quick question around the route to market, especially in the infant stages when organizations might want to assess the demand, right, from a certain market. Any suggestions on the best way to assess that demand for the market before making, applying your qualitative criteria to expand in that market?
Correct. Yes, that has to be done before we go into my flowchart, as you have said. And there are specialists. And for example, let me answer by Visigo. We have at least 3 international companies that do market research that we know of. So we can work together with our client and choose one of these 3 important companies that do market research, and we can get the results that you need, and it is either companies or organizations, institutions that can help you answer that question before we get into our flowchart. Yes. So it's just a matter of knowing the right people and having the right networks for market analysis.
Thank you. Thoughtful question. Great answer. Thank you. Let's continue to move around the room, and Tamer will hold on for a second because we'd like to hear from a couple more experts. And Catherine Reed, who is based out of Vienna, Austria, helps companies grow internationally with a particular expertise in China. If you're not connected to Catherine, you need to be. The thoughtful analyses and information she shares on her blog and on LinkedIn are really almost unparalleled in terms of how they articulate this topic and other topics related to international business, including food, which often is an important part of all of us, right? And how we and why we're involved with international business is, hey, if you don't like food, then that's a key part of it, right, Catherine? I know you're a foodie. What's your reaction to what you heard, and then what else would you like to add to the conversation today? Thank you for joining, and thank you for your expertise.
Thanks for the big introduction, Doug. It's pleasure to be here. Yeah, I mean, Tama and I, we already spent some time before this event discussing and going through the questions, because obviously a lot of the clients that I deal with are coming from a completely different perspective to Tama's clients. So my clients are often looking to expand internationally. They're often looking to do pure import. Well, they're looking to do import-export type business, but they're looking to mostly work through a distribution model, maybe with some acquisition and maybe with some, let's say, wholly owned subsidiaries on top of that as a complement to that in specific markets. But I would say that most of the clients that I'm working with, a distribution model is more suited to their possibilities, because if they're entering with products, then often it's, if they're under, let's say, 50 or even a 100 million turnover as a company, working with a distributor model is often the best way to, and the most cost-effective way to go into a market where they don't have any kind of brand presence already. Did we lose Doug?
Oh, I'm still here.
Okay.
Thank you. I was digesting what you said, so thank you for sharing on that. Are there important regional considerations to be made as well? I mean, the distribution and how it's done can vary country by country in terms of its importance. Are there any aspects like that that should be considered that you wanted to share?
I mean, I would say that if you're working basically with a distribution model, then the next step up from that for a lot of companies, at least for a lot of European companies, is to go with like a marketing office rather than a full wholly owned subsidiary. Depending on the level of penetration that you have in the market and the level of brand awareness that your products can bring up, probably having a wholly owned subsidiary in the food and beverage industry or within consumer goods, you've got to have a really strong market presence already before you move to that stage. So it tends to be at a later stage in your strategy. It's not something that you do straight up as a market entry strategy as such, unless there are very specific reasons for you doing so. I went in with a market entry with a client one time into the Turkish market because we simply couldn't find a suitable distribution partner, and said, with that cost breakdown that they're all giving us, it's just as cheap to run our own business, and we can found a subsidiary and run it ourselves, which kind of worked out, but it was, let's say it was a bit of a stretch. When you come into a market cold, and you've got the cash flow running, and you need to get your products onto shelves to make them work for the cash flow perspective for a wholly owned subsidiary from a standing start. That's really tough. Hence my preference to go with a distribution partner in most of the projects that I'm doing, but it's a different industry. So yeah, I think Elizabeth has something to add to that.
Yeah, let's continue to go around. Elizabeth Glenn is an expert on this topic. She's part of the Global Chamber Los Angeles Advisory Board. One of the things that is very consistent about Elizabeth from the day I met her, I think virtually a long time ago, within the probably closer to 10 years, I would guess, but certainly over 5. She has always been a very strong advocate for international business. And she, as many of us wonder, why don't more people go international? Why, you've got all of your systems built and you're going after a certain market that's maybe seem to be large, but the world is much bigger. Why can't more people think about that? And why can't we bring that methodology to them so that they can be more successful? So thank you for your passion and your leadership and your expertise, Elizabeth. What reactions do you have to what Tamer talked about, what he spoke about, what Catherine spoke about, and what you would like to add, please?
Thank you, Doug, and it's a pleasure to be here, and very nice presentation, Tamer. I am located in Southern California, so I work predominantly with manufacturers to align their export process with their current business process so they can accelerate and access global business opportunities. And to Doug's point, yes, in the US, we export far too little compared to the opportunity that exists. Yes, I see, Catherine, you're shaking your head. But we represent only 5% of the world's market, which means 95% is outside, and there's huge opportunity. Now, that said, I work with the companies to get them positioned so they can not only access the global sales, but also to build out over the long term. And I think Tamer's ideas about building out the business is more later stage. What we're trying to do is just get them to consider exporting and get them to consider the benefits of participating in the global trade markets. So that's key. Now, I do have one question for Tamer. You had mentioned, you referenced you have a unique that non-franchise alternative model. If you could give us like what types of companies would benefit from that, and also what are the key benefits, so that as I'm working with these companies and they're more mature, it's you mentioned some good options, but I'd like to know a little bit more about this option, please.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the question. So mainly you need to have, again, as Anita said, a differentiation, and it has to be normally or usually has to be a balance between price and quality. So you have to have an advantage in the price quality ratio, so that the people, the consumers, will choose your product, because if they pay less, they're going to get bad quality, and if they pay the same, they're not going to get or more, they're not going to get as good as quality as yours. So basically that is an important thing, and either product or services, but mostly services. What you would do is you would basically actually allow the market, the piracy market, to promote your product by copying it, and that will expand the concept that your brand exists, but then you have to do some things to differentiate yourself and make sure that the consumer looks for your product and not the copies, right? And one more, in the case of services, what I did, because this was more for a service company, is I created a training, uh, basically, it was a paid training product where everybody could learn. This was for her systems, how to place the her systems into the consumer's scalps, and everybody would learn that, and then they would have to buy the better quality products from you. So basically, they will copy you, and everybody will try to, just do what you do, but then forgetting, for having the best product, they will have to actually go to yourself, because they will never find the same price quality ratio. So that is what happened, and that is how it worked, and it worked fine.
A second question, I'm thinking as you're speaking, ideally for most of these companies to really benefit from your strategy, how mature should they be when they to start considering some of these strategies?
Well, they actually don't need to be too big or too mature. What they need to be is convinced that the next step is this, and maybe having taken the step with you of exporting a little bit of their product, and knowing that they have a market, either through previous exporting or through a thorough market research. And after that, the world is your oyster. You can go anywhere if you're sure that there is a market for it.
Thank you.
And who doesn't like oysters? Any other questions or comments, please? Feel free to open up. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Catherine, for your additional comments. Anybody
Thank
else
you.
think they'd like to share? David, thank you for joining. David Harlow, and the international work that you do in Southern California is extraordinary. So thank you. And then I see some really interesting folks in the room, including Lulu. Thank you for joining. And Maha, he was deeply knowledgeable exporter out of India. And so we talked a little bit about how countries matter a little bit. And that also includes, I would imagine, Tamer, the country you're exporting from. How does what you've described change, if at all?
Thank you, Doug, for that introduction. Is that the question to Tamer or to me?
Oh, I was asking Tamer, but did you have any comment that you wanted to make? What was your reaction to what you've heard so far?
Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you, Tamer. Please excuse me for keeping my video off. Too late for India, and the internet is a little funny. So yeah, Tamer, that was a great presentation. It is fantastic, but I joined 5 minutes late. So did I miss which industry do you focus, or this is a general approach you take for any market or any product or any size of the customers? So I was very curious to know the strategy part. It is fantastic how you analyzed the revenue part of it. But most of the time, the reason for this question is most of the time we see a company would win or it fails if they have deep understanding of the business culture and the lifestyle or the cultural understanding of that market. So how do you think these two factors fit into this strategy? So I would like to have one or two viewpoint on that. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Tamer. That's for me. Thank you.
Thank you. The other part of that, Tamer, is product versus service, and is that also change the equation?
Right. Let me answer, Doug, first. For the main flow chart, there's no difference between product and versus services, but for the particular specific, strategies like the NFA, non-franchise alternative, yes, there is a difference there. It's more useful for services, but that then they will need to use your product. So that was the intention there. And for answering Maha, can you please define the two factors that you talk about very quickly again?
Yeah, the one is the cultural difference.
Mhm.
The another one is the way business is done in a country, because what you could mention as franchising, yes, we understand the concept of franchising, but when the business is done, that will be FOMO model, that will be FOCO model. So that will be different model when we go into each of these strategies. And certain model would work in let's take a simple example of Catherine Food Product, a brand that wants to get into a country like India, where it has a different cultures. Some culture, they would like to have the brand owned by their local celebrities or influencers. Some market, they would be open to just have good quality with their competitive price, but every operation is taken care by the company. So how do you place this cultural difference and the business style culture difference, business approach differences into these strategies?
Yes, definitely. That needs some work into it. And definitely I wouldn't choose a subsidiary strategy there, because usually when you do a subsidiary, and that's a mistake that many companies make, is they're trying to impose their own culture into the customers or the new country's culture, and that's not probably going to work very well. So you make sure that basically in a case like India, there's a big population. The prices are a little less than in the US. So if it is American company, the best strategy would be probably a joint venture. And
Sorry if I
then
could just interrupt. Sorry, India is not just it's price sensitive market, is also a luxury market in many of the metros. So that's the reason I asked this question. Yeah, thank you.
yes, definitely. So you have to find out your niche, right? And depends on your product also. And basically, definitely for not making cultural mistakes, you need to work with somebody there that is local. So that's the I wouldn't recommend a subsidiary. I would recommend more like a joint venture, depending on the product or service. It could be a franchise, but most likely a joint venture. Depends on other conditions. Yes.
That's amazing. See, Doug, Global Chamber is an essential part of every company that considers to be globalization, I think. Thank you for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Tamer. Thank you, Maha. We only have about 4 minutes left, and we actually have two different events that follow this. So we need the Zoom rooms. So we have to wrap up fairly quickly. I'm wondering if, Catherine, you could take 30 seconds, Elizabeth 30 seconds, and then Tamer a minute, and then we'll close the room. And of course, everybody who's registered here will get the recording and the notes of this conversation. And if you have trouble connecting with anyone that you'd like to connect with, please let us know, info@globalchamber.org, and we can help if you're a member. If you're not a member, well, we might help anyway, but nonetheless, you should be a member. Elizabeth, would you like to go first? 30-second wrap up.
30-second. Thank you, Tamer, for a very insightful presentation. It gives me opportunity on how our companies, as they expand and they're more committed to global trade, how they can move forward. And it's always a benefit to be exposed to new concepts. So thank you.
Elizabeth mentioned about 95.5, the 95% of population is outside the US, and the business side of it is actually 85% outside the US. It used to be a lot lower, but it's increased to 85%. So it's made international business more attractive from a US perspective. And the other aspect that Catherine, you kind of touched on is, I believe Austria, 55% of GDP is export related. In the US, it's only about 15%. So the opportunity for the US, and of course, a lot of it is how it's measured in product services and things like that. But I think it's only 15% and about 55% for Austria, which says, hey, Austrians are a lot smarter than Americans. I think that's probably one of the conclusions, but maybe you have a different opinion. What would you like to wrap up with?
Well, firstly, I don't hold an Austrian passport, so I'll hold myself out of this argument. But yeah, thank you, Tama, for a very interesting presentation with a lot of details. And I think for a lot of people, it was a lot of food for thought. And I would just like to highlight once again that this is like Tama mentioned at the beginning, the strategies that he presents are for very specific circumstances. And I think a lot of SMEs are well served by looking at working with a distributor model. It sounds very simplistic, but it isn't. So yeah, that would be my takeaway, let's say, for the last point, just to broaden the perspective a little bit on that.
Sounds good. The analogy that I thought of during this, Tamer, was for sports, for baseball, football, of any variety of football. You practice what a process is. You do all of the work to just practice all the different scenarios. But at the end of the day, you got to go play and you got to compete against someone. And the ball or whatever is the object goes different places and you need to react. And how you react is really how successful you'll be. So what we talked about today largely was the training of what we should do. However, when it actually is now the game, everything changes and we need to be aware. And that's why hanging out with experienced people like Catherine and Elizabeth and Tamer, in addition to the process, is so critical. Tamer, what would you like to share in final conclusion? Only a minute.
Yes, thank you very much all for being here. And thanks, Catherine. Yes, I mentioned at the beginning that these are strategies for opening a location physically, and they don't apply to distribution or to import-export. And thanks. I hope that you can get something from this in the sense of you can make a distinction between strategies. And actually, for one company, I have applied all 4 different strategies. So it's not like, hey, let's franchise all over the world, and we do that. You don't need to do that. You can do franchise in some countries, acquisition in others, and I have done that. And it makes sense. Still, you have to analyze more factors than just what I showed in the flowchart. So your decision can change a little bit depending on other factors.
Thank you, Tamer. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you all for participating today. Let's continue to learn from each other, work with each other. It takes a village, and let's all be global and unstoppable. Thanks, everybody. We're going to close the room now.
Thank you.
Thank you.